Well, hello and welcome to PM Express. And today we are looking at the transition process. And indeed, if you're Ghanaian, if you're black, if you're an African, you have to tap into it. You should say that, look, Ghana is indeed making the black race very, very proud. And I've said it here once, and it's not a joke, that very soon we are going to be exporting democratic missionaries. And they'll go as far as America to teach them what democratic processes are. Because as the governments are changing from a different government to a new government, certain processes has to go so that the government is seamless and everything runs perfectly. Those leaving office hand over to those coming into office where it is they have worked up to, so they continue. It doesn't happen very often in Black Africa. It could be very rough. And indeed, even with us, once upon a time, there were no laws or there were no acts. It was just a convention or an understanding. But now that there's an act, is it just going to be on paper, or is there going to be that real, actual, mutual, seamless transition that we all want for our dear nation? And that's what we're going to discuss. So today is going to be much, much, much more of an education. And then we'll, digress a little bit, but still come back to the good old Act 845, what it says and what it mandates us to do. My name is Nana Sakwal, the fourth, Akwemwedu Masahine, and also your host. When I come back, I'll introduce my guest. But before, let's watch this, what happened at the transition process, the meeting that went
on. We have heard from the grapevine a few things which have become our concern, talking about the incoming government team, the transition team. For instance, we have heard about ongoing recruitment into the security services now, which we hope is not true. We've heard of conversion of temporary staff, of political assistants, and some of the staff we took on into permanent public servants. We've heard of award of new contracts after the election results are announced on the 9th of December. We've heard of procurement of sales and national access also after the results. We do not want to believe that these allegations are true. I personally don't. And therefore, I'm asking my colleague, the Chief of Staff, that after the election and the results have been declared, and the change is not from the government handing over to itself. There are two modes of transition. One transition is the government handing over to itself, as it happened to us in 2004 and happened to NDC in 2012. But in 2000 and 2016, the government handing over to another political party's government. The system is a little different. We need to be cautious, we need to be transparent, we need to be candid, and we need to be factual. We are therefore appealing to our colleagues that within this period, if there's anything that needs to be done, consultation have to be brought on board. Consultation meaning that the office of the president-elect is there, and if there's a need for an agreement to be concluded, it is only fair, and it's international convention that you bring in the in-waiting government, discuss, and get a green light to carry it out. We hope our colleagues from the current government would take note of these normal conventions and do a lot of consultation on these matters so that we have a very smooth and transparent takeover.
Decisions, as we've seen in the past, sometimes, comes with a little bit of heckling here and there, but this time around, both of us from both sides of the divide have agreed in principle that we have to try as much as possible for this to be one of the smoothest transitions that we've ever experienced. We're doing that with as much transparency as possible and as much openness to each other. Now, one of the main reasons why we are here today is to establish the various committees as required by the law, and then to also agree amongst ourselves other subcommittees that we think will be very relevant as far as the transition is concerned. As we speak now, we have almost all the handing over notes ready, and the reason is this. Per the law, all the handing over notes were supposed to be ready by September. But as we all agree, between September and December, naturally, a few things might have taken place. And so we agreed amongst ourselves to get everything that needed to be tied up done. But the good news is that as we speak now, the handing over notes from Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Lands, Ministry of Transport, Chieftaincy, Food and Agriculture, Fisheries, Interior and Defense are ready. And we'll make sure that the others that are left will also be ready by Monday, as has been agreed between myself and my senior colleague. So they will all be ready, and then based on that, we'll decide on how to proceed after the maiden meeting. So basically, this is from our side what I want to get across, but we also want to draw the attention to the various spokespersons from the two sides, that in order for us to, I believe, I don't want to say the media, but I believe some people will want us to continue the campaign mood. But I think since we're shifting from campaign mode to governance mode, as much as possible, we should try and, control what we say so as to ensure that the transition does not veer off from the responsibility that we have to the normal things that, goes on. And so we've resolved, the two leadership, that the two spokespeople, if there are anything you are not too sure of, please clear with either myself or Honorable Osafo Maafo, so as to ensure that we are making sure everything goes as planned.
We are working to ensure a smooth process of handover. That is essentially what the establishment of a transition team is for, and what the work we are doing is geared towards. And so the processes that we have just begun are to ensure that we can have clarity between the two teams as to what was the position as at the time they will take office on 7th January, and therefore they know what it is that they have in hand, and now it will be the responsibility of the next government to work with that and build on it. What I envisage is that as they go through the documentation, they may have questions. What is also the case is that whenever there's a handover from one government to another, there are always people who are in a hurry to try and build up relationships on the other side, and therefore might gratuitously provide information, which undoubtedly will be a source of questions. It's the reason why we have this structure that allows us to ask each other for information, to respond appropriately, so that whatever questions or concerns arise can be dealt with.
Kusumbu. Am I on air? Well, I guess I am on air. Well, welcome back. We are looking at the transition process, and with me here is Dr. Dusei Poku, lecturer, Faculty of Law, University of Ghana, and is also a private legal practitioner. Doc, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Very good. Doc, today I think it's going to be much more of an education, what's going on. And I think, if anything at all, it's a pass mark for Ghana. When I heard of the law, it just felt like it's on paper. But I see the process going on, and I realize, look, it's just not on paper, but it's actually happening. And so far, there's some cordial, respect between the two parties. But I'll leave it there for you to just give me preliminary comments on that.
Yes, it's supposed to go as we expect it to go. We've had this law since 2012, and all that it seeks to do is to draw on the strength of both the incumbent government and the government or the president-elect or the incoming government, so that they can put their heads together and make sure that in terms of stock-taking measures, in terms of transfer of power, things are done smoothly. That is what Ghanaians expect of them.
Good. Act 845, Doc. in reality, can it happen? I mean, basically, there's just guidelines. You're handing over your notes to the other. Without it, what was happening before?
Well, they were working based on experiences and what they called conventions. So as to how to work in the circumstance, they developed ad hoc measures in making sure that there's transfer of power. It may work to an extent because there are always limitations if you are not governed by any strict law. So what we have now is the law that sets some conditions as to what must be done at every point in time. If you look at Act 845, it indicates that within 24 hours of the declaration of who has won, and in this case that was on Friday evening, but because it moved into the weekend, we didn't see a lot of things. But within 24 hours of the declaration, the law mandates that a team is put together. And that team is supposed to come from the person who has been elected as president and the incumbent person, or the one who is leaving office. Each side, roughly, is supposed to get about 9 persons to be part of the team. In addition to that, there are supposed to be some persons who are seen as, whose services or involvement is seen as inevitable, such as the head of the civil service and other positions which are, for instance, supposed to be there for a long time to be part of the group. So, you know, we are talking of about 23 persons, and it basically includes all the important positions in the country: foreign affairs, defense, local government, chief of staff from the incoming government. And the same number of persons are also chosen by the president-elect to represent the incoming government's interest. So once the team is together, then the law mandates that within 48 hours of the declaration, they actually have their first meeting. It's been a bit late, but it's better late than never. And now the meeting is going to take place. Once they have their maiden meeting, they will start forming subcommittees. There should be a subcommittee for inauguration. There should be a subcommittee for government machinery. That's how handing over is done. There should be also a subcommittee for the presidency, because the handover is going to be done not only at the presidential level. There are also going to be institutional handing overs involved, all the way down to the district assemblies. So these bodies are supposed to be set up out of the 23-man personnel. And then once they are there, they can begin to work and bring about unity and also make sure that the transfer of power is smooth.
The parties that are representing the government-elect are not necessarily, let's say if you were chosen to go and represent foreign affairs, or maybe in your case, maybe justice, does it necessarily mean that you are the one going to handle justice when the government eventually takes place? Or
no, not at all. Of course, anytime you are being picked by the government-elect or the president-elect, it's indicative of how relevant you are in the party involved. But it's not a sine qua non that you will be in charge of that office when the government is in full swing. No, not at all.
Subcommittees. So what would a subcommittee do?
You know, what they do is that because the work is a lot, you have to basically segregate them and say that you handle these matters of inauguration. So how to get the systems in place, chairs, the venue secured and everything. So that will be in your hands. That's why it includes defense and all those, interior. So if they put you there, you have to work with the security agencies and make sure that they are informed of their roles and arrangements, who is supposed to sit where. So the whole group cannot go and do that work and then later on move to the presidency to go and also do some stock taking at the Flagstaff House. So they divide them in that order. Every team is not supposed to have more than 5 members, and work to make sure that the specific area of interest is effectively addressed. Once the do that work. Then they will report to the larger body and then deliberate on it and come out with consensus as to how to forge ahead.
Doc, I know that 30 days before elections, as the elections are coming, all ministries have to hand over their handover notes to the Director General.
Well, there is what you call an Administrator General.
Administrator General.
Yes, it's an office which is now in place, and the one who is manning the office is in the rank of a Court of Appeal judge. Mm-hmm. So it's quite a very quite lucrative position, and the person is supposed to be the liaison officer in making sure that all the institutions, local government, every institution is they get their handing over notes in place. I think that things might have not worked religiously as the law stipulates, because this change was sudden. It was quite sudden. I believe if the president had gotten a second term, they would have they know that he's not going to contest again. They would have made the man to do more work to get all the notes ready and then forwarded to the appropriate quarters. But this was sudden, and now it's down that they are trying to go around and get the information.
I was asking you this because the Chief of Staff said that between the deadline and some of the campaign period, certain things have gone on, and therefore I don't know whether they've gone back for the notes to revise them. But does the law put in place or takes notes that, listen, from the day you hand over, things may happen up until the day I have to hand it over to you? So that vacuum, what does the law, what provision does the law give there?
Well, the law would basically allow you to work even when there is that opening from the month before the elections. What the law will not do is that it will tell you that if you find new things, you can't add on. So it allows things to be added. But my thinking is that the preparations were not far advanced enough. It's now that they are trying to put matters together and then actually polish them up.
And they have 6 weeks.
I mean, we've already lost the time. So it's now that, I mean, it should have been ready by now so that the team will start looking at it, asking the right questions and finding answers. It's now that they are trying to put all of them together. Some are being done now. I mean, the Administrator General even, I think about 2 months ago, I watched him. He was complaining about how ill-equipped he was as a key government officer or a public officer. So he couldn't really work much. But now that it's come to the crunch, I believe he will move ahead and work faster with all the agencies and get the notes ready.
At this stage, what can the government-elect really do if you came to defense and then they handed you over the defense and then you realize that, look, the army has no bullets, or schools have no chalk? So I mean, at this stage, what can you really do with the notes? Can you complain? Can you?
Well, for matters of security, the president-elect is required to be briefed daily by the security agencies on the state of affairs, because it's very crucial. There are some things such as issues of chalk and other facilities that can wait a bit for the new government to think through how to proceed with them.
But what I'm saying is, I mean, at this moment, can you then come back and do a press conference and say, look, dear country, I've just been handed over the notes, and look, we are minus 25 instead of maybe minus 10, or instead of positive 5. Look, this is where I'm starting from.
That account to Ghanaians definitely will only be relevant when the government has finally been sworn in. The president has been sworn into office, parliament has also been sworn in, and it's normally done on the 7th of January.
But then you can come and account.
Then basically, I mean, you then would have studied the nose, and then you say that this is the state of affairs, and this is how I intend to get around my government.
I see. Let me digress a little bit and come back with regards to Parliament being dissolved and then electing of the Speaker. Now, how does that work? Because does the minority side also have to agree to what speaker you're bringing to the House?
They always get consensus on that issue. We've not had a situation whereby the party which is forming government is in the minority in parliament. So
we haven't tested it.
We haven't gotten to that stage yet. It may happen one day that someone may win the presidency and then lose parliament. It may happen. But for now, because of the way you have to cross 50% mark and the rest, and not having people vote skirt and blouse, in such a way that they will give the presidency to one party and then the parliament to another. We always have the government also being the majority in parliament. And once you nominate your candidate as the Speaker of Parliament or the proposed Speaker of Parliament, definitely you tend to get the other people on board to approve the person.
The other issue which Safumaf was raising is, as governments are exiting, they seem to do things that run beyond their term, and then the other guys get very upset that, look, when you were going, you had all these years in government, you never approved it. Just when you were going, you've approved this. And sometimes there are things that, put you in a tight corner. But technically, they're still in government. They're still a full 100% functioning government. Do they have limitations on what to do and what not to do?
Well, they're in government, but what to do and what not to do should be governed by law. So if you do anything outside the parameters of the law, then definitely the incoming government or the new government will be able to reverse that. Of course, that will also have to be done in accordance with law. So that is how it works. For now, what I would say is that for the oath of office that you have sworn to uphold, it is not in the interest of Ghana to do anything that is going to be very pernicious in terms of our economic interest. Know that if you are going to recruit certain numbers, it's going to affect the national budgets in the coming years. So beware that your term is ending, and therefore don't pass on excessive liabilities onto the incoming government.
Things like contract, get people's hairs, really standing up. I want to be the one to award the contract, not you. One would say, if it's not for the 10% that's on there, why are you worried about who signs for the road to get done or some building to get built? Why can't the outgoing government just award the contract? Why is it that the one coming in wants to do it?
I think the problem is not in that light that someone may want to benefit from it. But the problem more is the way it's going to weigh on the incoming government. So that is where you have to consider. So you look at what kind of system. The new incoming government may have a different agenda, and therefore if you want to actually visit a lot of liabilities on that government, then you have to pause and rethink. That's why I said that you have to be guided by your oath of office and also be sensitive to the needs of Ghanaians. The NPP has gotten different agenda that he is supposed to pursue. So if you sign on to some agreements that are not going to allow the government to function effectively, of course, they will also take steps to have the matter redressed. So if you're also a contractee or anyone who wants to enter into a contract with the government at this time and you think that it's being rushed, take your time. If it's a genuine contract, the new government will deal with you in that same light.
One of the things we've also heard is that the renegotiation of IMF. Once I come in, I'll renegotiate IMF. Legally, are there any loopholes to renegotiate such deals, or you're locking yourself into another judgment debt?
Not at all. I think there is always a way in dealing with the international community. Every government, depending on sometimes your philosophy, may have different goodwill as to how institutions and international bodies will deal with you. Nana Addo has a very good stature I believe he's going to put together a very strong team. And persons have different negotiation skills. So if they see that this system, which has been adopted by the outgoing government, is not going to be in the interest of the country, in making sure that the promises they gave to Ghanaians are going to be fulfilled, they will put their case across. And it's about convincing. So if you're able to make a convincing case, there's no way that the IMF will not listen to you, because in their view, they are serving the interests of Ghana. And then the government of the day is also supposed to serve the interests of the country. I believe they will be listening to the new government.
Let's come back into Parliament and get a bit of legal education as to who the Speaker is and how relevant, how important is the Speaker.
The Speaker is a very important person. The office is a very high office in Ghana. I know there are a number of times that the Speaker of Parliament has assumed the office of President, because the President himself and the Vice President are away. It's happened several times. If you remember the time that we had Honorable Joe Ajaho's issue as to whether he was supposed to swear to the oath of office of the President at every time, and now the Supreme Court has clarified that yes, that is the case. So, in the line of succession to the presidency, he is the number 3 person or most important person in Ghana before the Chief Justice comes in that kind of order. So you always need to get the right person, because if you have the Speaker of Parliament being acting president, and then he's also maybe interested in your position, and you go outside and say that you can't come back. So, but I don't think that it will reach that radical stage. So it's a very important office. I'm saying that to say that it's a very high office, and mind you, the person is also manning another arm of government. I mean, if you look at the branches of government that we have, as Montesquieu and Locke and Co. Bestowed on us. It is the executive arm, the legislative arm, and the judicial branch of government. So the heads of these institutions are key. The Chief Justice office is very high, Speaker of Parliament office is very high, the President's office is also a very high office. So that's how it works. It's a very important position.
Well, I'm going to take a quick break here, and then when I come back, I told you we're going to digress. We'll digress a little bit and talk about, people who are lobbying. I just want to find out if, in terms of lobbying, that's public sentiment when everybody's saying, oh, this guy will be very good at this position. Does it have an effect, in terms of who gets a position or not? Stay tuned, we're coming. Well, thank you very much for staying, and we are looking at the transition process and all that happens when you're changing from one government to the other. And as simple as we are saying it here, it doesn't happen that smoothly in Africa. We are still grasping on it. But I think as far as, democratic processes goes, very soon we'll be sending missionaries out to the likes of Australia and America to teach them how it is done. Just like we are sending missionaries, to the Western world to teach them about their own God. Very soon we'll be teaching them about their own governance. I mean, this is beautiful.
I mean, we've achieved some feats. I believe we will start with maybe the Gambia. And then when we are able to be successful there, then we can move out of Africa or the sub-region.
Doc, at this stage, there's serious lobbying. In Ghana, or with our constitution, it's winner takes all. And Agbongbabin says, well, if you're not going to share my losses, then you're not going to share my wins. And that's how our system works. So the supporters of MPP have been in opposition for 8 years. They now want the opportunity to also serve their country, and their power is in there. So everybody's lobbying. Now, public sentiment, and everybody's saying that, look, Martin Amidu should be the special prosecutor, Nana Ado should give it to Martin Amidu. I mean, when public sentiments are gaining like that, does it have an effect on the guy who's going to like say, well, if the public wants him, why not? Or it doesn't have any effect?
Well, it's always difficult to gauge whether the interest of the whole of Ghanaians and what they say is what to influence your decision-making processes. I believe the key issue should be whether the person being brought on board is competent, very competent to actually perform in the position that is going to be placed. That should be the key and cardinal consideration. But, you know, vox populi vox Dei. Sometimes the voice of the people can also be a swaying factor. But I don't think that should be the overriding consideration. It should be about assessment of the competence of the individual and what he can bring on board so that you can run your government very well.
Doc, do you agree with the idea of a special prosecutor?
I do. I think if we get an office which is very insulated from political controls, and that office is made to handle some of the key public prosecutions in the country, it's going to be very helpful. Because if you look at Article 88, which deals with the powers of the Attorney General to prosecute criminal matters and also defend civil cases or defend the government against, file suit on behalf of the government, it is a power that is quite large, and the way the Attorney General is also serving as the advisor to the government and also being appointed by that government, it's always possible that the Attorney General may decide not to prosecute certain matters. So if you have an office which is very secured, very independent, and then we appoint the right person, well, it's also conceivable to have that office. If you don't appoint the right persons to man the office, they may play to the political gallery. So to be able to have that office in place is important, to appoint very good persons who know that if it's even it implicates a government officer or official, and then I'm prosecuting, because of the way my office is set up and the kind of protections I have in the law that sets up that office, there's no way I will be subject of political victimization. And I think that is very important. So that the discretion of the Attorney General's office, who is basically supposed to deal with the executive arm, is somewhat taken away when it comes to dealing with very public interest matters and how to prosecute them.
But then, you conceiving the idea alone makes this special prosecutor sort of aligned to you. How do you select somebody where, you get this insulation? Are we going to now create laws for them to get that independence?
Of course, yes. The office would have to be set up by law. And it will also require that we do something about the constitutional provisions that basically vest the Attorney General with the powers to do criminal prosecutions generally. Of course, sometimes the Attorney General is able to delegate some of those powers to police officers under the Law Officers Act and stuff like that. But here is the case that we may need to focus on certain offenses or crimes. There are some offenses, all offenses are against the state, but some are really actually drawing on the state's powers and resources, said that you want an independent person to prosecute those. So when you have a law granting that independence and then giving security of tenure to the person, it's like how judges are able to work, and even if they give decisions and you are not excited about it, you will still not be able to remove them in that kind of light. If they have that kind of protection, they should be able to deliver. But of course, if someone is still very mischievous and not willing to act right, even if he has gotten that kind of protection, the person will still not act right.
Another thing which we get very worried and excited about is state estates, and the provision, gives, the period with which you have to vacate your house or hand over your car and all that sort of thing. However, in the same, well, not in this, but people are allowed to buy these things, and by this time, that's when everybody goes harvesting. buying their cars and buying their houses at discounted rates and stuff like that. Is there a law that we should still keep in our books, or something that we should take out? Because the law allows it. And anytime they buy, we get all upset, but the law allows it.
Yes, that's why I think when you are managing certain public institutions, you also have to rethink your positions and then be more discerning in terms of what you allow to go unquestioned. For instance, if you are the head of DVLA and then transfers from government to private individuals are occurring under your stewardship, you have to pause and check that. That is how institutions are supposed to work, so that when it comes, then there will be manifestation that you maintain certain level of equilibrium and also prevented abuse of the state. So check vehicles that are being transferred in the name of private persons. Of course, before they will come, you will know that the vehicle is registered in the name of the government. So if it's going to be registered in the private person's interest name, you have to check, and if possible, delay such kind of transactions so that the new government will know whether carrying them through is in the interest of Ghanaians.
But
the same with Lands Commission. The same, those institutions. That's why if you're a person, you have to make sure that you are in a position of service, and therefore serving your country is always better than serving other person's parochial interests.
You seem to have answered my question before I asked you, because heads of these institutions come from the same crop. So it's like I put you there and I'm now coming to register, and then you're stopping my registry, but I gave you the opportunity.
Well, someone might have helped you in getting the opportunity, but once you are in office, do the right thing. I think that is what is important here. And because you may not know what you'll be doing to help Ghanaians with, just do the right thing. And when you know that systems are changing, don't think that automatically you're also going to be changed. Do the right thing. Well, at the end of the day, we have laws said that if you aid the person in letting the state lose money, there are laws that could be used to deal with you as well. Even though you think you were performing your official function, but the state would have lost some revenue, resources, and there are laws dealing with causing financial loss to the state.
The other thing which probably we overlook is the magnitude of people that the president would have to hire, those who are leaving office. Some of them are literally automatic. As soon as the clock strikes the 8th of January, they are out of office. And we're looking at ministers, deputy ministers, regional, ambassadors, high commissioners. All these guys are they're finished. They have no work.
The offices are made available to the incoming government to decide as to how he can mold those offices to suit the government's needs and aspirations. So we try to indicate that ministries, there were political heads that were appointed for those ministries. There were district chief executives, deputy ministers that were appointed. Certain institutions have gotten CEOs that were appointed by the outgoing government. The ambassadors who are seen as political reps of the government outside the country. So those positions are potentially affected by the new government. But I believe that if you have served your country to the best of your ability, you should not be worried. It's your work that will speak for itself. So if your work speaks that you have performed very well, it is even conceivable that you may be retained in that kind of office, especially in relation to agencies and institutions of state. So they fear that everyone is going en bloc or en masse, I think is unfounded. It will take a bit of time for the whole system to be realigned, and then the government will then take off. For instance, it's the ambition of Nana Addo that eventually he will want to have a system whereby DCs are elected by the folks down. And of course, he may decide to let the current crop of DCs be in office for a while, or he may replace them whilst laws are passed to make sure that the elections are actually taking place. So that is what is going to be done. It's not going to be that everyone is going from day one. No, that is not how he's going to run his government.
I mean, the number of people, should they, look at the law to reduce the pressure on how many people the president appoints?
Well, already there are some checks and balances in the system. That's why I said not every person is going en masse. There are checks and balances in the system. You maintain certain persons who are seen as career professionals. If you look at the diplomatic sphere, there are some career professionals who are ambassadors and stuff like that, or deputies. So for the such offices, they are retained. And it's strictly normally the political appointees who could be affected. But once you have served your country with diligence, you should not be worried about an incoming government.
Look, the police fraternity, should we have a system where, the leader just rises from the police, fraternity, and then maybe they run, a term which does not coincide with the current government? Is it too dangerous, or can it be done?
Well, I think that is the kind of system we run. But of course, the appointment of the head of the institution is always done by the president. So there are systems in place in which you are allowed to rise through the ranks and become a commissioner, deputy commissioner, and those positions. But
no, I'm talking about the IGP.
Oh, the IGP himself alone. Well, normally, by the time you are appointed as an IGP, you would have served your country for years.
The reason why I say that is because if I appoint you IGP, I mean, 40% of your arms your wings are being clipped. And we've seen it time and time again. Every government that comes in, you realize that the IGP, there are certain things that everybody thinks, no, you should have acted by now. But obviously, if it's a political crime, now crime has been politicized, then, the IGP sort of stays back and cautions where he has to arrest. And
I think we'll grow, and as a country, over a period of time, and then get over that. If you recall, in the U.S., when Mrs. Clinton was campaigning, of course, there was the Democrats that were in government or who are still in government, but it took the FBI director, and then he wasn't actually fired. I think at some point in our political discourse and government, we'll get there.
But you agree something like that would help?
So of course, it will help if we actually try to insulate our institutions from controls of the executive arm. It will be very helpful.
Can you do that with the military, or that's too sensitive?
Well, the military generally maintains some level of professionalism, and there's a lot of stability in there. So there's not, because of the way they work, they are not normally required on a day-to-day basis, and therefore you don't see them in how they handle political incidents. So for them, I don't think that's where the problem is coming from. It's the ones we have day-to-day engagements with, where we need to be sure that the institutional heads are acting professionally and not actually serving the interests of only one person.
The deputy regional ministers. You were a lawyer. What do they do?
They, by virtue of their name, deputize for the regional ministers. Manning a whole region is a lot of work. So to require that you go to places, you go for meetings, and in the absence of the regional minister, the work is performed by the deputy regional minister. Or he may still be available, but you may have to delegate a lot of work to the deputy regional minister to do.
The DC, chief executives of all the civil agencies, is there no job for the boys?
Well, I think one person cannot do all the job. That's why we try to get deputies to help. That is what it's about. The DCs are also looking at the nooks and crannies of the country. And so we don't want to have that gap whereby the regional head is only trying to control everything. He has to delegate to certain persons, and if he knows that he has a deputy, in our normal organizational places, we still have deputy MDs and stuff like that to help. So I think that's just it. But if we realize that it's an excessive drain on our resources, then we'll see how to moderate the number of deputies who will be appointed.
Doc, with this transition and this election as it has happened, if we were going to write about it, I mean, what's going to be the significant thing to write about this? Because it's so new and there's just everything happening. What's that thing that we'll write about this election and transition?
Well, what comes to mind is how we normally describe events that are sudden if they befall a family member and that kind of thing. So you see that in the form of a shock or that kind of thing. So things are unfolding quite quickly. If once we are able to overcome this, then I think we have basically overcome it. Once we are able to let it work, then we know that after all, there's no guarantee that every person should serve 2 terms, and that's when Ghanaians are dissatisfied with your stewardship, they will retire you.
That's very, very clear and very, very resounding. And I'm sure that political parties now will set up. But Doc, so is that the end of all the small parties now? Is that the end of it?
Well, the political pundits will have a lot of work to do. They will be doing all the research. I believe these are fields for even doctoral studies as to whether this has come to stay, that we will not have a third force in our political discourse. We wish we had, so that it can serve as a countervailing measure against the 2 governments. But so far, it seems that we are running a 2-party state.
Because it will be very, very difficult to present yourself again. And I say that with respect to PPP, that I knew that as for their 5% or closer to that margin was in the bank for them.
Yes, the elections, I think what in government, and then you realize that people are queuing as early as 1 a.m. to go and vote, 12 midnight, a day or hours before the following day to go and vote. You should be worried. It means that it's a kind of vote of, protest vote or some kind of vote of rejection, and I think that's what happened.
The other thing is, so what then happens to the president? He served his 1 term, so is he able to come back and serve his remaining term? And has he got a deadline to say, look, maybe 20 years' time, is he still allowed to come back and say, look, you still owe me 1 term?
It's a very gray area. But, the Constitution envisages that you are given a 4-year term. If Ghanaians want, they may give you a 2nd term. And there's nowhere in the Constitution says that the terms must follow each other. So it means that it talks about, or the implication is that it should be a cumulative term of 8 years, max. So the president in 2020, if he's interested, that is a decision for his party people.
No, 2020 is too close. I'm talking maybe.
Coming back in 2028.
Yeah, say, hey, hold on, you still owe me 4 years, so I'm coming to do it.
I think there will be no constitutional bar. That's number 1. And that's if he will also be able to surmount the argument that someone was owed. But it was proposed by them. So it means that's why he's saying that if you are chewing a false hand, you look at your hand also.
I see. I know. I mean, the reality will be difficult. But I was just trying to find out if there was any legal bar.
No, there wouldn't be any bar. Insofar as the person has served only 1 term, he will still have a permission to serve another term if Ghanaians permit that.
Should the law let it run concurrent, or you think, look, let's leave it open and let people judge for themselves?
Now that is what we have. So I believe what we have now is the right system.
I see. Well, I think we've had some education. Dr. Edusei Poku is a lecturer, Law Faculty, University of Ghana, and also an astute legal, private legal practitioner. Doc, thank you very much. And if you're at home and you're looking at my shirt and you think it's a really nice shirt, well, write the number down, 024-366-2001, 024-366-2001, Tantis Fashions. Give them a call and order one of your shirts and they send it to you. Thank you very much for watching. Tomorrow we'll be back to do this all over again. Thank you. Oh, thank you.